to stop this and bring back power to the community. Thank you so much.
Hey everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is John Preisner. I'm a socialist and a community organizer. It's actively involved in the fight against war, bigotry, and inequality. I recently returned from a peace delegation to the DPRK, commonly referred to as North Korea, in defiance of Trump's outrageous threats of genocide against the Korean people. This country was founded on and built under white supremacy. The Trump administration is only intensifying the repression and openly saying what we have known all along. In addition to the vital necessity of a nationwide mass movement, now more than ever we need people in office who are willing to obstruct and fight back against these fascistic attacks by any means necessary. I demand an end to deportations and full rights for all immigrants, regardless of quote-unquote criminal status. I demand an end to racist police terror and mass incarceration. I demand an end to the rampant environmental racism. I call for every person to be guaranteed the right to a decent paying job, the right to form a union, for full housing, healthcare, and education. LGBTQ people and women must have equal rights in every area of life and full reproductive rights, including the right to an abortion and gender confirmation surgery. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is David Vela. I'm a political science professor at East LA College. I've spent my whole career serving the public. I started as the president of Chicanos in Community Medicine at UCLA. Also worked for Madame Mexicana for Immigrant Rights and their housing program. Worked for Jackie Goldberg, and then cut my teeth in LA County with Supervisor Molina for 10 years, ensuring that all of the community services were given to the local area. I'm really excited about sharing my experience as a public leader. I was also elected to the Montebello School Board member, where I fought for GSAs. I ensured that there were ethnic studies within the curriculum so that our students can graduate, including LGBT studies. I'm endorsed by State Senator Ricardo Lara, who's the author of SB 562. But more importantly, I'm here to hear what you have to say, and I want to be your public servant once in the State Assembly. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, my name is Patrick Coppola. I have lived in California for most of my life. I lived in this area for 7 years. I am a climate scientist. I did the research that actually established the health consequences of climate change and introduced them into the Kyoto proceedings. I am an entrepreneur. I started a company called GarageBand, which formed the basis for a democratic and prosperous independent musician community. And last year, I went and served on behalf of the Obama White House as a Presidential Innovation Fellow, a catalyst for creativity and innovation in government. I've come back to California to create that kind of opportunity here. Thank you. Patrick Coppola.
Hi, I'm Mario Olmos, and I'm running for one simple reason, and that's to focus on protecting children from sexual abuse. There's about 40% of homeless women in this community, in this district, that were sexually abused as children, and now they're homeless. 2/3 of people addicted to drugs are addicted because they were sexually abused as children. 80% of our children in juvenile hall, both not just the women, but also not just the girls, also the boys, are in there because they're sexually abused. And what we do as a society is we deal with behavior instead of the root cause. I feel that it's a lot easier to grow a healthy young child than to fix a broken person. And our society has a tendency to ignore the sexual abuse. We have children that dress in sweaters in the summer because they want to make themselves unattractive. We have women who have grown that are not able to show close emotional ties to people because of the shame and guilt or that fear of being touched. And I plan to change that. Thank you.
My name is Marco Menigan, and I'll be reading a statement from Alex De Ocampo. I apologize for not being able to attend. My husband and I are foster parents, and we're preparing for a court hearing regarding our child, who we've raised since he was 3 days old. I wanted to briefly share with you my story and why I'm running. I want to ensure that California remains a place where if you work hard and play by the rules, you can succeed. My father came to Los Angeles from the Philippines in the 1970s, where he faced the harsh realities of being an immigrant. The neighborhoods I grew up in were tough, but because of public education and the guidance of mentors, I was able to succeed. I started my career in the entertainment industry through the Youth Entertainment Summer Program, which connects disadvantaged youth to jobs at studios. I worked my way up through the ranks, ultimately managing the $400 million budget of the Saban Family Foundation and helping establish the foundation's most impactful projects in Los Angeles. In the Assembly, I'll fight to lift people into the middle class and help working families by creating jobs, creating more affordable health care, and expanding paid family leave. I'm proud to have the endorsement of people like Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell, Congressman Brad Sherman, Assemblymember Rob Bonta, and community leaders from across the district. I humbly ask for your vote October 3rd. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jose Ugarte. I'll be speaking on behalf of Mike Fong. First, before I start, can I just get a moment of silence? I have family in Mexico City. My mom's there right now, so if we just take a few seconds to have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Sorry about that. First, we'd like to apologize for Mike not being here today. He had a couple of scheduled meet and greets, and he might be here a little bit later if they end soon. But if you guys know, Mike's born and raised in the district. He went to public schools his whole entire life. Castro Elementary School, Nightingale Middle School, and Bravo Magnet High School, all in the district. He got his bachelor's degree from UCLA and his master's degree from Cal State Northridge. He's also worked in this entire neighborhood for almost 10 years. He worked for Councilman Ed Reyes, and then recently for ex-mayor in East LA. He currently is there, or he works for the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, working with the neighborhood councils all around this district. So he has really deep ties in this district. He's also your vice president of the community colleges. He also represents the entire district. Recently partnered up with the city of LA and Mayor Eric Garcetti to pass College Promise to make community college free for the first year, and that's what he wants to work on, making 2 years free. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. And now we'll go to the questions. I'll ask the first and rotate it around the horn. This one is about incarceration. Prop 47, which reclassifies some non-violent felonies as misdemeanors, and Prop 109, the AD 109, which reduces sentences for non-violent, non-serious, non-sexual crimes, are often heralded by criminal justice reformers as big steps in the right direction. But law enforcement groups and their allies, at least some law enforcement groups, say that these are going to cause a crime wave, or already are causing a crime wave. So I'm asking, starting at the far end, where you stand on this controversy, and in the Assembly, would you work to uphold these steps, hold on to these steps, or abolish them?
So again, I mentioned that my focus is on preventing sexual abuse of children, and the reason I do that is if we look in our county jails and in our prisons, they are full of individuals that experience adverse childhood experiences, either sexual abuse or physical abuse. And so what happens is they grow up, they're upset, mom allows their boyfriend to come in the middle of the night and jump into their bed, and they grow up angry. They grow up and they commit crimes. And we cannot, in all due consciousness, release people just because of what happened to them with their children and feel sorry for them. If they committed a crime, they need to be incarcerated, but we as a society need to do more to prevent people from committing crimes in the first place. And the way we can do this is when we have 80% of our kids in juvenile hall incarcerated because of abuse, we need to work on preventing the abuse. We need to end the taboo. We need to start talking about abuse that happens in our community instead of being silent like we do so much. And thank you.
So this story starts far earlier than this proposal or this law would let us believe. This story starts when someone grows up in a neighborhood where they don't have access to a high-quality education, or when they grow up in a neighborhood where they don't feel safe, or when they grow up in a neighborhood where they don't have the kinds of supports that come from a public space that's conducive to meeting people and forming community. So sure, yes, maybe we should be thinking about decriminalizing some of these things and reducing sentences, but really we ought to be thinking about what are the conditions that create this risk for people in the first place. Thank you.
I would definitely adhere and support all of these policies. I think one of the biggest things that I saw in my experience working for government is how much, for example, marijuana was criminalized in the East Side, and how it really created a problem for students, for children. My sister actually, which I love with all my heart, but part of the reason her self-esteem went down is because as a juvenile, she got caught with marijuana. And that kind of ruined her whole high school experience. I was student body president, I did all the right things, she did too, but after that, she started acting up. And now I had to put my sister through community college and help her at a later age when she was a single mother. So that's just one effect. But I think we need to stand strong and ensure that these policies stay in place in our state. I think it's only ethical and it's human for us to do that. And so I'm really glad to hear that you guys do care about these policies, because at the end of the day, that's how we're gonna keep our community moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with any measure that would reduce punitive sentencing. We cannot reduce and tackle mass incarceration without doing so. The way to protect our communities is, as stated, to meet people's needs. Militarized policing is only making matters worse. Programs like violence interruption programs like the NEAR Act have had excellent success with a 70% success rate. It's also a travesty that we could put somebody in jail for a minor drug offense when major corporations who do the same thing. Wells Fargo was actually caught laundering millions and millions of drug money. And not one of them went to jail, and yet a street level dealer goes to jail. It's an absolute outrage. We need to get these people out of the jails, back in their communities, and focus on rehabilitation and not punishment. Thank you.
Well, I support those propositions, but I'll even go further. I would like to end the war on drugs, the war on personal behavior, because at the end of the day, the war on drugs is a war on us. If you go to East LA, here is a nice area, so you don't see it as much, but going to East LA, you see the abuse. Last week I went there and I met this mom. This is what she said. The difference between a police and a gang member is, at least the gang member goes to jail. That's the main problem. Because the police here in the North Side District, at least they're nicer. I'm being honest. In the South Side, they're not. And this has to do because right now the police have to enforce unjust laws. So the main problem we have now, we have too many unjust laws in the book. If we end that, and along with having police be involved in the community, I believe in the neighborhood program, neighborhood patrols, and communal policing. And if we do that and end the unjust laws, we will have a better society. And for people already in jail, we need to re-educate them so they have they have skills to join back to the workforce. Thank you.
I do believe I do support these policies, and fundamentally it's because I believe in second chances. People have the power in them to change their lives, and we need to, as a government, as a society, make those opportunities available. I had an experience in my young adulthood where my mom passed away, and two older brothers, and everybody reacts to tragedy differently. They got involved in local substance abuse, they got involved in local gangs. They both did some time. One completely turned his life around, is now doing finance at Warner Brothers. And one did not do so. But it's what we need are the opportunities and the funding so that people have the services and the opportunity to rehabilitate and to be productive members of society. I've seen it in my own family that people can take charge of their lives and do better, and we need to make sure we're there for people. Thank you.
So, like everybody up here, I also support those policies. And I also think, the legislative session just ended. The legislature failed to pass money bail reform, AB 10, and I would want to reintroduce money bail reform. In other words, the money bail system it's an example of what I call the high cost of being poor, where you get punished for being poor.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we have to, mass incarceration has been a problem in this state. Is California particularly a repository of evil people that for some reason we should be incarcerating? So obviously no. And so then what should we do instead? And obviously it starts with a whole range of things, and many of my colleagues have mentioned them. I'd like to start with one that's been proven to keep people out of the criminal justice system long term, which is universal preschool. People need safe communities, and there's some better ways to do it than locking people up.
I'm a strong supporter of criminal justice reform, and I'm honored to have the support of Father Greg Boyle on this very issue. I support these policies. We also know that these types of issues we face are interconnected. We are having an educational system that leads from schools to prison. We need to put the school to prison pipeline to an end. We also know that we as a community voted for this initiative, this proposal, but we need to make sure that the legislature also ensures that we have resources to ensure that those individuals who are leaving prison also have the resource for reentry programs. So there was a failure of legislation that I will address if I earn your vote in Sacramento. We also understand and appreciate that there are concerns with our judicial system. Individuals, because they're African American, because they're Latino, because they're poor, are being disparately impacted in a way that is not going to lead to a better California, and I'll also work on issues of inequity with our judicial system. Thank you.
We're going to move on to our second question. And as you said, everything's interconnected. So California just became a sanctuary state this past weekend. When SB 54 was signed into law by Governor Brown. But it was only passed with certain carve-outs, including a provision to allow ICE to continue entering county jails to question prisoners on their immigration status, and to allow local law enforcement to hold and transport undocumented immigrants for ICE if they had committed one of 800 crimes. Do you think that federal officials should have these powers? If not, how will you roll them back to protect our immigrant communities if you win this seat?
Again, for me, having a person being able to come forward and feel comfortable coming to the police for safety reasons should not be overshadowed by a fear of being deported. And again, I hate to beat on a dead horse, but I'm talking about preventing sexual abuse, and most people cannot come forward and report the abuse if they're afraid they're getting deported. Just common sense. And this district being 67% Hispanic, there's a lot of illegal immigrants in this district, a lot. And a lot of them do not feel safe. They might come from communities or countries where it's not even safe to report a crime, even if they live there legally, because they don't trust the law enforcement. I know that there are some places in Mexico where if you call the police because you've been robbed, you have to worry about them taking the rest of the stuff from you. And these are reality problems that people do not trust police officers, and we need to really do something different and change our immigration laws to make people feel safe. And I think the only thing we do is full amnesty. Thank you.
So I'm an immigrant, and I'm an immigrant, thank you, yes, yay, immigrants, we do the work. And that's why my parents came here and brought me here, is to do the work, work that other people wouldn't do. But one of the things about being an immigrant is that you don't know, you really don't know most days, whether you are part of the world that you're living in. And that's a situation that leaves you feeling very precarious. Recent events, chaos that's happening at the federal level, it has, I mean, I gotta say, Californians banded together, showed an enormous amount of courage in the face of that chaos. And yes, sanctuary cities, sanctuary state, that's a step in the right direction. But I believe that this is a moment that we can do more, and we can start to think about, well, why are there 3 million people putting themselves in nation-state limbo in our state? And what can we do to bring them hope into our society? Thank you.
You know, I think our Constitution is in place to protect all Americans, and I think that when the federal government becomes draconian in nature and it tends to violate the amendment theory or incorporation theory, which is the 14th Amendment, which causes federal mandates, and really at the end of the day, that's what happened in this country, where we allowed to make this the conversation and the policy arena of Congress, and we've got to take that away. The Republicans, when they were not inside our federal government with a three-branch rule, they, bloated or they boasted state rights, and now they don't. Now they're looking at us like, what are you guys doing? You guys are being extremely, aggressive. Well, we need to be. And so sanctuary state is a first step to really fighting back on this oppression, on what can become the destruction of our country. And we need to do more, including pushing the city of LA to becoming a sanctuary city.
We can't fall into the trap of saying they're good immigrants and bad immigrants. It feeds directly into the xenophobic hatred. It's extremely dangerous, especially in light, I'd like to highlight something that happened on the federal level. The House just passed H.R. 3697, the Criminal Alien Gang Member Removal Act, which buried in that bill says that anyone who aids and abets an undocumented immigrant can also be classified as a gang member. It is outrageous. I demand full rights for all immigrants. So if I'm elected, I'll do everything possible to obstruct. We should not cooperate with ICE at all. ICE is a reactionary, Gestapo-like force. And in addition to that, whether I'm not elected or not, I'm continue to work to build a mass movement to defeat this in the streets. That's how we got DACA. So we've got all major progressive movements in this country have been achieved by such united action. Thank you.
Well, I don't believe it's the role of the state, any form of state or local government to enforce federal law. We live in a federalist country, so it's not our responsibility. If the federal government can't enforce their law, it's their problem, not ours. And besides being Latino, I'm also Native American. And when Europeans came to the Americas, we welcomed them and we helped them out. And I believe that's the spirit of California. We welcome all people. We don't care what you look like, believe in, how you may talk. We welcome everyone. And we're a state of opportunity, and we keep being that state. Thank you.
Set up? Yeah. All right. So I'm also going to do everything possible to make sure that we defend our immigrant families under this administration, which is just terribly awful to see. As I mentioned, come from an immigrant family. My father came from the state of Michoacan, and he came to this country picking peaches and sake. And a very common story. I have extended family that has been forced into the shadows in this environment that we're living in. But here's what I'm going to do. Obviously, we share common ideas on this, and I think the votes will probably be similar. But I am going to lead as a grassroots activist, which is what I've been doing. I'm so proud to have the endorsement of the East Area Progressive Democrats, which I have helped lead and build, and that's what I want to continue to do, because we have to win races across the state and across this country. And unless we invest our own sweat equity in doing that, we're going to have the same politics that we have. And we need to change that, and I'm going to lead that way. Thank you.
Not so very far from here, several months ago, ICE picked up Romulo Avenigo Gonzalez, who, thank God, is free now. The day, shortly after that, there was a day where I took my daughters to school, and then I went to a protest in front of the federal building and saw his daughters, and saw the look on their faces of daughters whose father had been picked up, and sort of picked up by the government. As a Jewish person with Argentinian heritage, it sort of has such a profound emotional impact on me. So, on policy, of course, I would have voted for the California Values Act, and it's right that it should pass. I also, the Justice Fund, which is done in LA County and City and County, which would give immigrants facing deportation hearings counsel, I think we should do that at the state level, too. Because not every county or city would support its immigrants as we would. Congress should pass the DREAM Act immediately. And lastly, and that means we have to, we have to talk to Congress, and you have to understand venues where the right things happen. And lastly, I just want to say that I like the idea of sanctuary city and sanctuary state. I don't think the president does, and I sort of like that it makes him unhappy. He needs to know we reject this sort of line of governance.
This issue is incredibly important. It's been a matter that we're working on since I was in high school. You want someone in Sacramento who has a history of working on these issues and have a demonstrated commitment. I started working on this issue when I was a volunteer, working to assist individuals become documented under the past comprehensive immigration reform. But this is also something I've been doing as a civil rights attorney and education attorney for my clients across the state, where I provided them guidance on ensuring that they pass resolution agreements and underscored that we still have anti-discrimination laws. We still have Plyler v. Doe, which allows undocumented immigrants to receive a free public education, and we still have the fundamental right of education in this state to ensure that everybody receives a quality education. I have been endorsed by individuals who have worked on these issues throughout their life. Individuals like Vilma Martinez, the former president of the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund. Individuals like Karen Tubman, who's leading the charge to protect undocumented immigrants and DACA individuals, and have led the challenge against Arizona, as well as Chris Newman and Victor Nato. You need experience in Sacramento, and I have that experience. Thank you.
Jump in real quick with a follow-up question, because it seems like there's kind of like a general consensus of maybe that SB 54 doesn't go far enough, or so I heard a little bit of policy talk, but I would like to hear a little bit more. If anyone who thinks that SB 54 doesn't go far enough, if you could talk about, take 20 to 30 seconds and talk about what you would do to protect the undocumented people that aren't protected with the sanctuary state law. Starting again, you don't have to.
So one of the things that we need to do as a state is decide where our priorities are. And so I don't think that it's enough, just like DACA, it couldn't easily be taken away. So I think we need to decide as a state that we want to fight for full amnesty so that things are not taken away from us later by whatever administration comes in or whoever comes into power and decides that they can change laws arbitrarily. We need to fight for full amnesty and protect every single individual that's already in the state. Thank you.
I'm going to take a slightly different angle on the question, because I find it problematic that we talk about protecting instead of empowering. These are people that, as I said earlier, put themselves in nation-state limbo to do something here and create public value for all the rest of us in our state. And I think what we should be thinking about, and how we should be thinking about it, is how do we empower them? How do we unlock their potential to create even more value than they already are for all of our combined well-being?
I think we could get really detailed. I mean, I support Senator Ricardo Lara's bill on not allowing contractors who want to build this ridiculous wall at the border from them being able to qualify for state projects. That's the right thing to do. As a state legislator, that's an easy policy move we can make, and I'll make. But let's really look at the reason why the United States is having this problem, and that is because we haven't been good neighbors to one of our most friendliest of places, which is south of the border, Mexico. And really, unfortunately, it's become a discussion of how our history is now coming to brew, and at the end of the day, we need that discussion. We need to build alliances with our Latin American countries.
Yeah, you know, this is...
Hold it. Clarification, follow-up for 30 seconds, right? Thank you.
Yeah, clearly it's obviously going to be difficult to address these things on a state level. But my policy would be to do anything and everything to obstruct ICE. ICE should not be allowed to set foot in a single state-owned building in this state. And yes, the carve-out to SB 54 just shows how unwilling the Democratic Party is to capitulate to this. It's outrageous. The criminal alien program that was removed, where ICE can troll through jails, that accounts for 75% of deportations. And why are these people in jails in the first place? Because they're undocumented. They've been forced to survive and try to find a way to support themselves. Often involves criminal activity. Thank you.
Yeah.
There's something we really need politicians to do that we could do ourselves. Whenever we see checkpoints, we let people know. And for me, whenever I see a checkpoint, when there's a checkpoint, I let my people know. I have my cell phone. I call a couple numbers, and they let everyone in the area know, like, oh, there's checkpoints. No, there's something we could do right now, and we get involved in the community. And it takes a lot of work from us, but we can't protect our. We can't help and protect our rights. Thank you.
I agree that there's some things we can do in our own community, and I know of pop-up clinics that are being formed to help folks with the necessary legal services that are often needed. But I think the state should do more. I think the state should fund legal services and make sure that folks that are dealing with these issues actually have a revenue source and a program where they can have legal services paid for. We need to prioritize this issue. It's a crisis issue, and we need to be there for everyone's families. And I think we need to pass a budget item to provide legal services. Thank you.
So I'll just I did talk about some policy, so I'm going to talk about some more policy. So one is, key point, the right to counsel doesn't assume anything about whether you've done something wrong or not. It's a right. Right? So, and then, as a physician, in working primarily in the safety net, I've taken care of many undocumented human beings for years, and understand things about the My Health LA program and how unfair it is. And so we have a lot of work to do there, and SB 562 addresses that. Finally, let's not forget that there are many different communities, including 1 in 7 Asian Americans in Los Angeles County who are undocumented.
As counsel to school districts and community college and university up and down the state, it was absolutely clear that we needed to inform the community regarding their rights under the Constitution and under their civil rights. And I think that is something we need to do a better job at, working in partnership with stakeholders, with organizations like the ACLU, like the National Immigration Law Center, and SHRLA, organizations that we've worked with as a firm to ensure that we give information to the community. Because there is a tremendous amount of fear in the community right now. It's palpable, and it's our obligation as legislators to use this bully pulpit to protect those who are most disenfranchised, and that's what I'll do if I get into Sacramento. Thank you.
Louder, louder.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey guys. Okay. So we're gonna switch it up, and this time we're gonna start with you answering the questions, and we'll go down the line. Okay. So here's my question. Washington is working to either repeal or undermine the Affordable Care Act, and Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All proposal is unlikely to pass anytime soon, allegedly. So how would you solve the problem of providing health care for Californians, including the millions now who either lack insurance, even with the ACA, or the underinsured that can't utilize the insurance they have because it's too expensive for them?
Well, let me first say that I believe that healthcare is a fundamental right, and this is something that an issue is affecting across not only the state, but across the United States. And there has been several attempts to move this piece of legislation forward, but there has been a failure to work in concert. I'm happy that there has now been affirmative steps taken by the Speaker to really get to the heart of the issue of how we're going to fund this, because this is something that these people have spoken, not only in this district, but across the state. But we now need to ensure that there are thought leaders and policymakers to get this done. We also know concurrently there are issues of challenges of individuals who may lose their health care because of the individual in the White House and the threats that are being made by Congress. There has to be a concurrent plan, being ever vigilant to see what's taking place in Washington, D.C., but also leading the way here in the state of California, because we are the beacon of progressivism now. And we need to ensure we lead the fight. How will we do that? We need to bring the Senate and the Assembly together, and we need to roll up our sleeves and get to it. There have been excuses that we can't pay for it, but we need to identify sources of revenue to address that particular issue, because that is what the community wants.
Thank you. They've been identified, actually. And so, you know, the nurses who've led on this issue have been very careful and systematic about studying the finances of this. Now, at a certain level, there's something we've always known, and we've known it forever, which is, or for many years, which is that single payer is a cheap way to do healthcare, not a more expensive one. And so, I know the answer to the question is SB 562. That's the answer. But I just want to make sure, because somebody from this stage or a couple other people are going to be representing this district, and you have to say the right things about what's true. So one, we can get federal waivers. Two, there is a funding mechanism, and we can go into details about that plan. And three, it's really just a matter of political will and making the arguments. And actually, it's about you too. You have to mobilize for this.
Yes.
I fundamentally agree. It is about political will, and we need to make sure that we continue to build that political support and that we have a broad coalition that's deep, that's diverse, that is saying healthcare is the fundamental right in this state, and it should be throughout this country. I've actually spent the better part of my career in the healthcare space. I've worked for over a decade with health centers serving underserved populations, primarily Medi-Cal populations. I work today for the City of Hope, a premier cancer center that serves some of the folks with some of the most rare and complex cancers. And I know, I have seen the failures of the ACA when you have narrow networks and medical groups and other provider types that are insistent on what they call leakage. That is, don't let people leave our network because we want to control costs. And if, God forbid, you have a rare complex cancer and you need a center of excellence like City of Hope, we need to make sure that folks have access to the right care at the right time for their condition. So yes, we need to absolutely insist on universal care, on single payer, that people have access to the care that they need at the lowest possible price and the sustainable price going forward. Thank you.
The best thing California could do to make healthcare affordable and access for everyone is to be transparent. For instance, last year I had to get an ultrasound because I had found a lump in my body, so I was worried. I called more than 13 doctors and none of them would tell me the price because I was paying out the cost because my deductible is more than $7,000. I can't even use it's useless for me. And I called 13 different doctors and no one told me the price. They said, oh, we can't. So at the end of the day, I paid more than $200. Oh, sorry. I paid more than $200. And for instance, something California could do is allow nurses to have full practice. Right now, Medicare pays nurses 15% less for the same stuff doctors do, but California is not allowed. That's something that could save taxpayers' money. It's your money. You could save that. Hospitals right now overcharge on prescription drugs. For instance, hospitals charge fentanyl, cyanide. Is it painkiller? $200, but they bought it for less than $2. Thank you.
Yeah, like almost anyone here, I support SB 562. And it's kind of funny that the Democratic Party would even pat themselves on the back for trying to support this. It's something we've been demanding for a long time now. The only reason that it has to be supported now is because it's political suicide not to, because we've taken to the streets and the tens of thousands. I think SB 562 is a good start, but I think we need to go further. You shouldn't have to pay a dime when you go to the doctor.
There's no co-pays in the doctor versus SB 562.
Yeah, universal. You should be able to get anything you gender confirmation surgery, anything. But you've got to, and how are we going to pay for this? Obviously, there's a lot of different ways we can pay for it. It is cheaper, as others have said. We need to make sure we're meeting people's needs before profits. We live in the richest country on earth. There's 58 billionaires that live in Los Angeles County alone. So we have the money to pay for these things. Thank you.
First of all, I want to applaud, Bernie Sanders for bringing this to the forefront, and California, in particular, taking the bold move of State Senator Ricardo Lara, and looking at the ways we can fund this, our top earners, creating a pool where single payer is funded is the first step. But I got to tell you, from a pragmatic point of view, I was the chief of staff in the state legislature, and nothing gets done without having community outreach. And one of the things I would do immediately is come do a select committee in the district, have your voice documented so that it gets into the policy committees and budget committees in the state. Because without that, I can't take all 50,000 of the highest people that are active in my district and bus you there, but I can do a committee here in the district. And then also get along with the other side of the house, because the Senate will kill any committee, any bill, if you're not already talking to them ahead of time. So I want to be able to ensure that single payer gets through the right way with your voice, and I'll be that vehicle for you. Thank you.
How many of you think that Californians deserve the best healthcare in the world? Applause. How many of you think that Californians deserve the best healthcare in the world? What?
Everyone deserves the best healthcare.
All right. So how do we do that? We look for inspiration in the places that are delivering great healthcare in the world. Germany, Switzerland, France, Japan. Second thing, how many of you think that Californians have the know-how to figure this out for themselves? That's right. So that's the second thing we have to do. We have to have a process where we're figuring out what's happening on the ground in California and develop a system that's going to work for us. And lastly, how many of you want to be able to make sure that this thing is a beacon for democracy? Democracy? Anyone? Thank you. So that's the third thing that we have to do. We have to make sure that whatever model we come up with has democratic oversight and is subject to the democratic process. Thank you.
So I often tell people that if California was a country, we would be the 6th most powerful economic nation in the world. Considering all the oil-producing nations, that's pretty impressive. So I don't understand how the 6th most powerful economic nation in the world can't do what other countries that are much less economically viable of doing and producing, providing healthcare for every single resident. So there's a couple things that we need to do in order to do that. And the most important thing is we need somebody to stand up to our pharmaceutical companies. Somebody was saying they're absolutely right. Why can't I go to one hospital and they're charging $12,000 for a surgery and another hospital charges $7,000 for a surgery? We need somebody to get line item prices on hospitals where they have to divulge a standardized method of billing. We have to get our pharmaceutical companies to lower the prices, and we need to stop issuing patents for methods of transportation for the medicine that have nothing to do with changing the medicine. So we need to do a lot of things to regulate our medical company. If we can do that, we can bring the price down so that it could be affordable for everybody to get free healthcare. It's a no-brainer.
Okay, so we thought we would switch it up, not only have these minute answers, but we also wanted to do a lightning round, which kind of being able to ask questions on a different spectrum, and you utilize, can you borrow that? Utilize one of these little paddles. Green is they agree, yes. Red is they do not agree, no. You're all going to answer at the same time, and we're going to break this up into 2 different rounds. So this first round, are you guys ready? No maybes, no maybes. You gotta commit, no. Okay. All right, so here we go. First question. Are you in favor of a ban against fracking? Okay. Next question. Do you see gentrification as a serious problem in our community? All right, thank you. Third question. Would you support the elimination of the ROTC program from public schools? Okay. Number 4. Number 4, would you agree to co-sponsor SB 562, the Healthy California Act, which would provide comprehensive health care, including dental and vision care for every Californian without co-payments or deductibles for billions less than we are paying now? Number 5, would you support efforts to protect all resident properties, but change Prop 13 so it no longer applies to large commercial properties? Yes. 6, would you support a bill to repeal the Costa Hawkins Housing Act? Is class size more important than the quality of the teacher?
Wait, that's not yes. Oh wait, that isn't. But that's not agree or disagree. That's not a real.
Is class size more important?
Oh yes or no? Okay.
Yes or no? Is the class size more important than the quality of the teacher?
I guess that's no.
Hello, people.
No. No. Yes.
Next.
Yes, is
Do you support the elimination of California's bail system? Elimination of California's bail system.
mostly yes. Except Gabriel and Andrew.
Okay, that concludes our first round. Thank you guys.
Is it working now? Yeah. I want to compliment this audience. I can't believe how attentive you are and respectful to the folks. This race must really matter to you. And I congratulate the speakers as well. Money in politics has gotten a lot of airtime lately. You know the story, the $50,000 plate dinners, the billionaires who managed to get millions of dollars into races. There's been a lot of talk, but there hasn't been a lot of action. If you get in the assembly, would you attempt to rein in the effect of money on politics? And if so, how would you go about it? I think it's maybe your turn to start first.
Sure. Again, my name is Mario Olmos, and one of the things that differentiates me from every candidate here is I have not accepted a single dollar from anybody. I have not accepted any donations whatsoever. People that try to give me money, I tell them, you know what, give it to a local nonprofit. Give it to an organization that will better the community. Imagine what $10,000 would do for the local senior citizen service center here. I mean, this is ridiculous. This group is spending over $2 million to run for a position that's only going to be for 1 year. For 1 year, and then we're going to have to run again in another year. And so, again, I mean, it's just sad that people feel that we have to raise so much money to go to get an office, to get elected. I believe that we can, through sheer willpower, determination, passion, get enough people to vote. There's about 300,000, 400,000 registered voters in this district. We'll be lucky if we get 10,000 to show up. And the reason that happens is because there's so much apathy. I commit to having my office open on the weekends, full hours on the weekends, so that we don't have to meet at a forum like this. You can come to my office on the weekend and express your concerns. Thank you.
So money in politics, it gets a lot of attention. But I think that there's another side to this equation that doesn't get enough, and that, I appreciate Mario, people in politics. As I started to get up to speed on what's going on in the legislature, I learned about a proposal to introduce something called voting centers. And they sounded pretty cool. They'd be like an Apple store or like a wireless carrier center where you could go in and get full service on your voting. You'd be able to like get your registration, get your mail-in ballot, do all of these things, and it would be fully staffed. I'm like, that's neat. That's a really neat idea. There are lots of really neat ideas, like, you know, voting from your phone and whatnot that we could go for. But what struck me as odd about the actual bill here is that in addition to creating these voting centers, it would be doing away with traditional polling places. And this strikes me as something that, like a teacher that says, hey, half my class really loves turning in their homework by email. Let's make everybody turn in their homework by email. But that's backwards. The thing that you ought to be doing is letting people turn in their homework by email, or voting in the polling places, or using a voting center. And this is a design flaw. And this happens all the time. And this is why I'm in this race, is to fix this kind of backwards thinking. Thank you.
I think two quick things you can do, honestly. You can limit contributions for state legislators to personal contributions, which Congress does now. And then you can also put a cap on the amount of money per individual. Right now, the reason why it's $4,400 per individual or company for our race is because incumbency matters a lot in Sacramento. So when you're out there and you're having fundraisers in Sacramento, you get stuck in a cycle. Basically, people show up, it's not a problem for pharma, for whoever, to just drop $4,400. But your voice, it's a little bit harder for you to drop $4,400. But it's all about incumbency in Sacramento. It's all like that. I've been up there, I worked up there, and so those two things, which probably I would get a little bit of pushback by a lot of the incumbents, but I didn't get, you know, I got all my money's pretty much personal. I didn't get, you know, big labor behind me. I didn't get anyone behind me. But that's part of the reason why I would do that. Thanks.
Yeah, as a socialist, I definitely recognize that money not only controls politics, but almost every aspect of our life. Those who have the most money have the most access. Ever since I logged on and got approved to be a candidate, my mailbox has been inundated with all these offers of people with mailers and all these advertising services. I haven't used a single one of them, and it's probably going to hurt me significantly, but there definitely needs to be total equal access. We need to have an open debate. It's very clear in this country that the parties that have the most money, you have to then, you know, solicit donations, and then you're beholden to those organizations, as we've seen over and over again. And I have also taken no money like that. But yes, I definitely would support any measure to reduce that problem. Thank you.
The best thing we could do right now is to increase transparency. Right now, if you're really rich, you could launder your money basically to support candidates. You have different nonprofits, and you make them or influence them to support a candidate. It's basic money laundering. And but what's something that we have to change is change our mindset. We should localize our solutions, so there is more local control. When we do that, the government, especially the state government, has less power over us. Because right now, the reason corporations are trying to bribe their way for influence is the state government has too much power to give. There are companies right now, they make lots of their profit out of taxpayer money. And that's ridiculous. The government shouldn't have the ability to take your money and give it to someone else. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I believe we need public financing of elections in this state. That's what I support. I think that there are other creative things that we can do to have matching programs, for instance, where if someone is a low dollar donor, why not match it so that that voice of someone that is not a high income earner but wants to participate in our elections can be matched. I think that equalizes our democracy. I also think we need to reform the system of independent expenditures. In this election, at this point in time, I haven't seen any independent expenditures hit the field, but I'm sure they're coming. And certainly they will come in the runoff. And so in the runoff, this election will look very different, where it's all about major IE expenditures coming from major interests. Let's limit the impact of that and cap those contributions. Why should they be unlimited and diluting the voice of the campaigns and of the voters? Thank you.
And I mean, we should share the facts of the situation, which is, in fact, one campaign, the Carrillo campaign, is a beneficiary of a massive independent expenditure program, and like some big philanthropist in San Diego just dropped more money into that. And so, we have a terrible finance system, and there's two parts to that, right? So one is, as a candidate, you have to do the right thing, and then the other thing is we have to reform the system. So my campaign has said we're not going to take a dime from a corporation. And the answer to that fundraiser is you got to say no to the pharma people and say, no, I'm not going to take your money. Now, the next thing, though, is yes, we have policy changes. The Disclose Act needs to be rounded out. It got partially gutted. We need to ban corporate funding, and then we also should overall go to clean money campaign finance reform. I agree with Luis. Ultimately, we need to overturn Citizens United, and California can play a role. Last thing, this is an issue of the sustaining of the patriarchy, because men make more money than women, and so you see how that works, right? So when people understand this as a civil rights issue, it will finally change.
We need to get money out of politics. We need to overturn Citizens United. I don't know how many times individuals say, well, you have to go meet the third house. That is disgusting to me. We need to ensure that we are beholden to the community first, middle, and last. Period. We know that companies do employ our individuals, and they're good corporate citizens. But we also know that there are a lot of talented people in this community who simply cannot run to represent this community because of the current system we have in place to run for office, where it's going to be millions of dollars collectively to represent who we are to the community. That is a tragedy. We should be outraged. I will fight for more transparency laws when I heard the vote of this community, because there should not be any decision that is in any way adversely impacted because of special interests. Period. Thank you.
All right, I'm told I have time for 2 questions. This was originally going to be 1 question, kind of tackling both housing and homelessness. But now I would like to just keep the answers kind of tied or directed at housing, and we'll get to homelessness later. I don't think I have to qualify this, but we're in an affordable housing crisis, and we have been for a while. If you won the election for state assembly, what tangible steps would you take to stop this crisis? Did everyone hear that?
Repeat the question.
Yes, how are you going to stop the housing crisis? We'll start with the Senate.
So this takes more than a minute response, but there are many ways that you can address these issues. First of all, we need to ensure that we are requiring the state to work with counties and cities to ensure that they take the responsibility. There's a big challenge that people face when they try to build affordable housing, and that's an issue of NIMBYism. So we need to make sure that we are okay with creating affordable housing, not only in the city of Los Angeles, but with regard to other surrounding cities, so that every single city takes the responsibility. Two, there's an affordable housing crisis because there is a failure to ensure that individuals understand what their rights are and their responsibilities are. There are anti-discrimination law provisions. There are tenant rights provisions. And unfortunately, at times, individuals simply don't know what their rights are. And by that, they are able to understand and appreciate what they can or cannot do in terms of affordable housing. Third is, there are a package of bills that were just passed that addressed issues of that. Some of that is to include that we create more opportunities of housing stock with existing housing stock we have, by making it easier for individuals to convert their garages, to convert their basements into secondary housing. This is a multi-year, multi-generational issue that we need to address, but we also need a fighter and a leader to speak on these issues and work in concert with other governmental entities across the state.
Mr. Moderator, given that the gentleman spoke for 1 minute 28 seconds, do you have a problem with every one of the 8 candidates having 1 minute 28?
I don't.
Anyone else object to that?
I do not.
You guys have a problem. Yeah, we absolutely have a housing crisis, and it's incredibly tied to homelessness. So I guess we will come back to that. But tangible steps. So we should renters are the most vulnerable people, and so I will be a renters champion if I'm elected, and that's what this district needs to say. We should repeal the Costa Hawkins Act.
Yes.
We should reform the Ellis Act so that sort of bogus evictions don't keep happening. And then anybody though who is, I just saw a statistic that really caught my eye, which is number of units per housing per capita. California is 49th out of 50 in the country. And so the answer is we do have to have policies that aim at abundance of housing, especially affordable housing. The legislature took some action. It's good action. There will be a bond up in front of the voters that was passed. There will be a new tax on real estate transactions. Those will help fund some of those priorities. I think there's other things that can be done, including the formation of a state bank, the whole linkage approach, but finally, I'll just say that building housing it's important to bring people together from many backgrounds and be a fair, straight shooter on the issues, because there's a lot of competing issues in development.
When the median income in this district is $43,000 a year, and we see the rents where they're at, $2,500, $3,000 and more, when home ownership is just so inaccessible now for so many in our district, this is a crisis that requires a response that's equal to the challenge. Now, the bills that we just passed in the legislature, good start. But this requires bold action. There is no reason why we cannot find the revenues in this state if we had bold progressive leaders to introduce and pass revenue schemes like the oil severance tax. It's tax the oil that we have in this state and that we do like in Texas and Arizona. Let's make sure we have the revenues so that we can fund our state and make sure that we fund affordable housing and low-income housing. This is going to take years unless we have that sort of bold approach to address this issue, because it took us many, many years to get to this point. So that's my approach. I also think that the renters, we certainly need to protect our renters, but we need the revenue source and the system of carrots and sticks, so that for those communities that are falling behind on their housing goals, we need to make sure the state says that's not acceptable and you get penalized for doing that. Thank you.
Well, as as a construction worker, I see firsthand that the problems we have for affordable housing. Right now, it's not affordable to make affordable housing. It sounds silly, but it's true. For instance, the development fees in California are around $22,000 versus the rest of the state, $6,000. That makes it, so what happens is since the fees are so high, the construction company or developers, whatever you want to call them, they pass the burden to the renters, to the buyers. So if we make it expensive to build in California, we make it affordable housing that's possible. These programs to make more affordable housing, they're only going to get a little bit of the problem. Like, we had this program since 1980. We give it subsidies, tax incentives, mandates, and every year we build only 7,000 affordable homes, all of California. So it's not clearly the government can't fix it. We have to fix it ourselves. For instance, the Filipino Worker Center, they built a multi-unit housing complex. And they wanted to build one more story, but they couldn't. Why? Because local rules prohibit them to build it. And it's that there are workers trying to help the problem, but the government's making it hard for them to help the problem. So we need to make it easier to build more homes, because we are the solution, and that's it, we're the solution. So we need more, we need to make it easier to build. That's it, simple supply and demand.
Yeah, I also agree that we need to repeal the Costa Hawkins Act, but I also think we need to completely repeal the Ellis Act. I don't think you should be able to get evicted at all. It should be illegal. In addition to that, we, again, live in the richest country on earth. Housing is not really as expensive in the grand scheme of things as we really think it is. There's no reason we can't construct additional housing for people as needed. There's no reason we also can't provide additional transportation and mass transportation so that people can get to where they work, so they can have affordable housing and where there's space for them in the city to get to where they work. And also we need to enforce, we have rent control and we have laws in the books, but the enforcement is lax. We need to make sure we're enforcing these bills. We need to make sure that the rent control is stronger. I have rent control, but it's still, I'm gonna be pushed out eventually. So, there's absolutely no reason why every person cannot be guaranteed the right to a home. Thank you.
I think we're really looking at a multi-pronged approach where we've had the City Community Development Commission, we've had the County Community Development Commission, we've had state housing, but they work in silos. And all these different funds are separate from each other, and they're not working together. But I would like to do a couple of things. Number one, I'd like to see our LA Community College District and our CalState system immediately build and mandate from the state to build student housing. I'm a college professor right now at ELAC. 10% of my students are living in their cars or are not able to have a house. They have living arrangements. That is unacceptable. That's one way we can increase housing. It'll take tension away from the general housing population. The second thing we must do is push the responsibility of the low-income housing more into the nonprofit developers that we have in our community that have earned our trust. We really need to have that in order for when and if we don't repeal the Ellis Act and you have landlords that are working with market rate, our lower income in particular can go into affordable housing, senior housing, and they're able to then have somewhere to live. And then I think at the third level, we really look to look at infill housing. We've stopped that. We have so many empty lots in Mount Washington and Highland Park, in so many areas. We need to incentivize that we build single-family housing within our neighborhoods that are balanced. And the way you do that is you do cash payment assistance programs for housing. In order to become, we have so many renters, we need to steer some to home ownership for low income and middle income. And then finally, we need to increase the poverty line. It's been too low. That's why we can't get into affordable housing, because you're supposed to earn $20,000 a year for two people. That's ridiculous. As a state legislator, I'll change that. Thank you.
So I don't think this is an affordable housing crisis. I think this is a housing crisis. And it looks like an affordable housing crisis because these kinds of systemic dysfunctions, they roll downhill and they hurt the most vulnerable of us first. But it's coming for all of us. Like, if you don't know this, in suburbs of San Jose, wages have gone up 300%. During the same time, housing prices have gone up 900%. Now, this is not the homeless, right? This is not the people who would normally be touched upon by affordable housing. This is potentially all of us. Okay, but the good news is that it's fairly straightforward how we have to deal with this. What do we need? We need more houses. We need more houses that are more densely packed. That's the first thing. How are we going to get that? Well, we need a capacity in order to build it. So that means that we need to be able to incentivize people creating construction companies and housing development companies. And if we do that, that brings us to the third thing, which is that those companies are going to require labor, and that's going to increase wages, which is going to make it possible for more people to afford the housing that's being built. So we just have to get out of this debt spiral, and we have to do it by focusing on those three things. Thank you.
So if we were to build every affordable housing project that we have on queue, it would really make this much impact on housing in general. It's just not enough even if we build everything. One of the things that I would definitely fight for is universal rent control in the entire state. And that's also including commercial property. There's a lot of local restaurants or local businesses that are edged out because the rent increase is just way too much for the business owners to handle. I make it easier to convert granny flats. So I have a garage that I could easily convert into a small apartment, and we could provide tax incentives to rent those to veterans, to homeless, to people that are low income and they really need that housing. Also, pathway to ownership. Right now, one of the biggest problems is when a house goes on sale here in Highland Park, the mortgage companies gobble it up, they flip them, and so a house that maybe could have sold for $400 is offered to you for $600,000, $800,000. I live in Eagle Rock right now, and I wouldn't be able to afford my house. You know, I bought it for about $150,000. It's valued at $650,000. It's ridiculous. I can't afford that. Our kids can't afford to buy homes. So the most important thing also is building colleges and universities. In California, since 1980, we built 23 prisons, and we haven't had a problem filling them, but we haven't built colleges or universities. I know that all of you that own a home probably got a good college education and got a good college degree, and were able to get a great job to get housing.
So I have a real quick follow-up for everyone that wants to take it, because this is something we wrestle with a lot in our Housing and Homelessness Committee, but in your own words, in one sentence, what is affordable housing? I'll start at the back this time.
And a friendly reminder, this is 30 seconds.
Right, or less. You don't have to take the whole 30 seconds if you don't want to.
So for me, affordable housing is when you don't have to make a decision whether you're going to buy food or pay your rent. That's simple.
I would like to see it at around 25% of your monthly income is where either your rent or mortgage should be.
Plenty of countries on earth where you don't have to pay anything for housing. That would be ideal, of course. Get as close to that as we can, but it should be a fundamental right that you pay nothing for. And also, I'd like to note that empty houses, we have 17 empty houses for every homeless person in this country, and that an empty home costs more to maintain than a home that's filled with a person.
Affordable housing for me is not, like what Mario said, not going to choose between food or housing. That's it. That's it.
Affordable housing is having a roof over your head and being able to afford to live with the basic standard of living and dignity.
I just agree with what Mario and David said.
I agree with 1/4 of what they said, plus the affordable housing is ensuring that an individual who receives a minimum wage in this district can, in fact, live in affordable housing. There should not be an individual who works in this community, whether it be a teacher or someone who works at a store, and just cannot put a roof on his head. Affordable housing is ensuring that you have a house, a roof on your head, and you're making minimum wage.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask that all of the candidates please stick to your time for this last question, you would potentially be cutting into your closing remarks. Okay, so this question is an environmental question. The Trump administration has been trying to roll back environmental protections that have been put in place the last 8 years. What would you do to protect California against the rollbacks in protections?
So we know that there's been affirmative efforts taken with respect to the rollbacks of late by Governor Brown and others, but I think we need to do more. I think that dealing with the status quo is insufficient. There's also a lack of understanding that the biggest environmental concerns, or as equal concerns, are the fact that we're not doing what we need to do with regard to environmental justice issues that are affecting certain parts of our community across the state, and that there are a lack of resources to address the contamination, for example, of our own brothers and sisters and communities surrounding Exxon. And this should be unacceptable. Yes, we need to protect the environment, we need to protect animals, we need to protect the ocean, we need to protect our forests, but we need to protect our families as well. And we should have immediate responses when individual family households are being impacted and affected by corporate polluters. And we have not done a good job about that. We should get to serious business, pass policy, and make sure that corporate polluters pay.
So, there's a lot of things we have to do. So I think we should pass a carbon tax. I think we should ban fracking. I think that we should, that access to green space is itself a civil right in your community. And then I actually don't, even though we were just talking about housing and homelessness, I want people to remember that homelessness is one of the most profoundly toxic conditions that anybody can live under. And finally, I want to say, looking back at the last legislative session, where there were bills to set a target time to end the use of fossil fuels, and also bills to simply put in place the Obama-era environmental protections, well, why did they pass with a supermajority of Democrats? And the answer is money in politics. It's that people are bought and they vote like Republicans instead of Democrats. And I want Democrats to vote like Democrats.
I couldn't agree more, Ron, and I will be that reliable Democrat, and that's why the Sierra Club knows that, and that's why they endorse me, because they know my values align with our environmental movement in this state. I've demonstrated that locally, as we say, all politics is local. I fought for our single-use plastic bag ban. I fought to make sure that we push back on the proposed expansion of the Shoal Canyon dump above Eagle Rock, and work with our neighbors, and I'm going to work with voters and neighbors to make sure we pass a ban on polystyrene in this state, so that we can continue to make sure that our rivers and our streams are clean, and yes, that we hold corporate polluters accountable. That's what the work I've been engaged in, and that's what I'll continue to do for a clean California. Thank you.
The fact is, we need to emphasize more on property rights. We don't need complicated laws to solve our environmental problems, because the more complicated the laws are, that means there's more loopholes, and corporations use that to their advantage. So if we emphasize more property rights, you cannot contaminate my home, you cannot contaminate my water, you cannot contaminate the air I breathe. We need simple laws so we all understand. So it shouldn't be that complicated. As I said, simple rules that we all understand, so we know, oh, cars shouldn't be emitting smog in the air, or having ozone convert to NOx. If we have simple rules, we all understand, and we don't know, oh, he's a polluter, we go after him. We close down his business and go to court to get money back. That's it, simple rules we understand, and emphasize more on property rights, because at the end of the day, right now, despite all these complicated rules we have, corporations still polluting our homes.
Yeah, this is a really big problem in California. I would also support a ban on fracking, polystyrene. And you know, with these looming potential further cuts, you know, it's really highlighting how ineffective our existing enforcement has been. The Tesoro oil refinery merger was recently approved, which was absolutely ridiculous. Wilmington residents, which is the town, one of the two towns that houses this refinery, cancer rates exceed 1,000 per 1 million. The EPA is supposed to act on 1 in 1 million. And the South Coast Air Quality Management District, which has done nothing in this regard, in their self-description, it notes that they are sensitive to businesses. So the businesses are going to be fine. We need to get these refineries out of our communities. We need to stop the environmental racism. 91% of people who live within a quarter mile of an oil refinery, oil well, are people of color. We need to put people's rights first. Thank you.
We really need to look at the way that we support Cali, PA, and all of the many legislators who have fought the hard fight, being environmentalists. We are not able to enforce these laws. This is the big problem about Sacramento. You go up there, you pass great environmental law, and then like you mentioned with AQMD, there's no one enforcing the businesses that are polluting. We really need to ensure that our agencies are fully staffed with enforcing staff in order to make all of these policies work. Immediately remove any fracking from the coast. And obviously there's been a lot that we can do in order to fight. You know, I mentioned state rights in order to suppress some of these, the federal administration's rollbacks, but we need to stand strong as Californians. And I can tell you that if we create more dollars towards enforcement, we would be in a much better place, because that's where we're wasting a lot of our time. Thank you.
So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm an environmental scientist. But when it comes to policy, I think that there are two things that don't get enough attention. And the first thing is disproportionate impacts. Now, there's disproportionate impacts on both sides. Some environmental issues, they affect some communities more than others. And the second thing is remediating those environmental issues also falls as a burden to some communities more than others. So we have to talk about environmental justice, and that's the first thing that I will do, is bring an environmental justice perspective to all of our environmental work. And the second thing is that, you know, no matter what we do, sometimes bad stuff is going to happen. And so I believe that we need a resilience economy. And I believe that this is one of the larger economies that we need for the future, where we can start to build systems that allow us to help us protect each other and bear through the bad stuff that is going to happen and come out the other side stronger. Thank you.
Again, my name is Mario Mosa. I'm on the board of directors of the San Gabriel Valley Conservation Corps, and the reason I serve on the board is obviously because I want a clean environment. But not only that, we use the poor to hire youth to plant trees, to go up in the forest and preserve our forest areas. So environment could be used as not only a way to make everything cleaner, but also to provide more jobs in the industry, renewable energy, and our dependence on fossil fuels. So also, one of the most important things that I feel we need to do is get dark money out of politics. You guys know that there's corporations that will pay the money and they'll be allowed to pollute or do whatever they want as long as somebody looks the other way. That's it, I'm sorry. Well, I think more importantly, we need to look at the environment as a health issue. It's predicted that in the next 10 to 20 years, 1 out of every 2 California residents will get cancer. We need to make our environment cleaner for our health.
Thank you.
So thanks for sticking with us. I have one more question before we kind of wrap things up here. As promised, my question about homelessness. So as I assume you are aware of here, homelessness went up in LA 23% last year. And what's especially staggering is that Latino homelessness went up 63%. This has always been a problem since I've been here in LA, but it's at historical levels right now. So what can you do at a state level to fight this? Start at the far end.
Again, one of the first things that I would do is focus on prevention. 10, 20 years from now, we're going to be talking about homelessness, and 40% of women that are homeless out on the street are there because they were sexually abused as children. There's a lot of other things that go on that force people to homelessness, but one of the things that you have to consider is that there's a lot of children in our school district that are homeless and are living from couch to couch, staying in different people's homes because they can't afford a place of their own. So there's a lot of issues that we need to fix as far as, but we really need to make it a priority. Where is our priority that we have people that live in this district that don't have a place of their own to live? And it could be easily solved by, again, converting garages into granny flats to provide housing for $500, $600 a month, where a small single woman and her kids can live, or individuals that are going to school, our grandkids, our children that wish to move out of the home could afford housing on their own. Thank you.
So there's two parts to this. There's two parts to a policy program around homelessness. And the first one I already touched on. There just aren't enough homes. If we create more homes, and we create the capacity to make more homes, and we can increase people's wages and the demand for labor, then that's going to address one portion of the homeless population. Now, there's a second part of the homeless population, and that is not, strictly speaking, just about having enough homes. And that's actually about creating communities that are inclusive of other ways of living. And there, I think we can look to the reforms that are happening in the continuum of care, because they're showing promise in being able to incorporate people into communities, whereas in the past they hadn't been able to.
You know, I think we have done a lot to support our brothers and sisters out there, but you know, most cities in Southern California, in their master plan, they've been denying affordable housing as part of the master plan in their cities. This is happening due to NIMBYism. And we have to understand that no matter what, we're okay and that's fine, but we do have to find a place for recently evicted folks, and that's where the Latino population is becoming more homeless. I really worked hard at Hermandad Mexicana immigrant rights firm to build immigrant housing. It wasn't easy because most of it had to lay outside of residential neighborhoods, which is great, but that's where we need to concentrate. Right now, transportation, we just passed Measure M, so we really need to use these transportation corridors and build housing along them in order for there to be less people in cars. Some of these immigrant families that are actually homeless rely on their cars and are living in them now. So they would rather put that money in having a roof over their head, and that's what I would like to do, is incentivize that type of housing. Thank you.
Yeah, as we've already touched on in the affordable housing section, there's a lot of things we can do to kind of prevent people from being homeless, but it's shocking how many people are homeless now, how many people are recently homeless, just down the street from me. Yeah, so we need to, not only do we need to make sure that people have affordable housing and construct additional housing with state dollars, create state jobs in order to construct those housing, we also need a massive campaign to get out into the streets and identify these people and get them into housing. And if someone's not recently homeless and they're not homeless for you know, a lack of having affordable housing, if it's someone who has a chronic homeless issue, has mental health issues, we need to make sure that we get those people to mental health services. Mental health services in this country and the state are woefully inadequate. So yes, there's definitely a high priority. Thank you.
The homeless issue we have is our fault. That's true. We as a society just push homeless people in the corner. For instance, I do business with homeless people, and many people look down on me. Why do you talk with them? And it's not hopefully not people in this building, but there's so people out there that look down on homeless people. They treat them like second-class citizens. So we need to change ourselves and our attitude in order to help them. We need to treat them, we see them as equals, not second-class. So first, housing, like my dad used to live in the garage, that's a good option as a transition. And we can build more homes, because building homes takes a while. It takes like to build 20 units takes around 14 months. So for the meantime, transferring garages are good for the meantime. And we do, for instance, mental for vets. For instance, right now, when our vets come home, we treat them like shit. That's the truth. we don't treat them well enough, and they serve our country. Drug users, we end the war on drugs. We allowed to treat them as a health issue, not a crime, and they'll be more open to ask for help. And that's several months ago, a homeless person OD'd on heroin, and the reason they didn't ask for help because she was scared. Thank you.
So I think part of the solution, part of the approach to our homelessness problem has to be back to the discussion around affordable housing. And we need bold intervention here to make sure that we have resources so that we increase the incentives for the production of affordable and low-income housing. That's one key part of this approach. The other part, and you may have seen the real estate firm Zillow put out an analysis a few months ago, and they looked at what a 5% increase in our rents would do to the number of homelessness. And they estimated that 5% increase would equal 2,000 more people on the streets. So what we need is a fund, is a resource that can also provide the social supports for folks that maybe just missed, had a sickness in the family, had some lapse in terms of their pay, some sort of social supports that can keep people in their homes, and that we have greater coordination between local, county, and state resources for folks that are struggling. Thank you.
So in my work as a physician based in the county and in community settings, I've been taking care of people who are homeless for years. And so I want to say something about my kind of front row seat on that problem. And that is that there's certain parts of, and you have to understand problems to come up with solutions. So there's certain parts of the homelessness problem that are long-term and structural. They include the bad way we help people with mental illness, the problems of addiction, and also the problems of getting, after you've been in the criminal justice system, getting work. Now, that has been around for a while. The big explosion we've all seen has been about housing prices. That's where this came from. So we talked about housing, but I want to say something then about the other side, which is wages. We have made a mistake in the economics of this country. We reward capital too much and labor not enough. And there are very concrete policies we could make to change that, and will have a direct impact on this problem.
So we're facing a humanitarian crisis in this city. We have about 55,000 homeless individuals who are our neighbors, our brothers and sisters. And we know that there's multiple issues that's leading to them sleeping on our streets or in their vehicles. We also know that we have Measure H and Measure HHH that was passed, billions of dollars. But we also know that that particular source does not provide supportive housing for individuals who are in fact homeless but living in their car or in their campers. And the majority of those individuals are women with their kids. Now, the city and the county recognize that there's a problem with that, but we also need to ensure that we understand that we need to focus and target on different types of sectors. And I would focus on ensuring that there are women and children programs to ensure they are removed from our streets. But we also know that we need to do a better job at the state level to create more resources for issues of mental health and work in concert with local governmental entities, because this is a complex issue that requires complex responses. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to priority follow-ups and jump right into our last round of yes/no lightning questions. So you're a little bit sectors ready. Okay, cool. I'm going to have a couple of them to hand it off. Yes or no, I agree. I support the full repeal of the Ellis Act. Everyone? Okay. Yes or no, I believe housing is a universal right. Great. The last one, yes or no, I believe that the people of LA and California should have a say in whether we have the Olympics or not. That the citizens of LA and California should have a say in whether or not LA hosts the Olympics. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, you guys are not off the hook yet. All right, so let's get into the rest of these yes/no questions. Do you support the Second Amendment? Would you support the declassification of cannabis as a scheduled drug? The declassification of cannabis as a scheduled drug. Do you support the expansion of charter schools? Do you think police officers should get paid more than teachers? Can an elected accept special interest money and still remain impartial in representing the best interest of their constituents?
Wait, what was?
Can an elected accept special interest money and still remain impartial in representing the best interest of their constituents?
Got it.
Thank you.
No.
Next question. Should non-citizen residents participate in local elections? Local. I would do. Sure, yeah. Okay, in your opinion, is there a need for police officers to possess and use militarized weapons?
Honestly, no, except Patrick.
Would you support a bill to mandate time off on election day?
Everyone says yes.
And finally, in the event that you do not make the runoff, would you endorse one of the candidates that does? Okay. In the event that you do not make the runoff, would you endorse one of the candidates that does?
I'd like to thank Mike, I think it is, and the Bell Club. Isn't this a great place to have an event? Yes, sincere thanks to these fellas for sticking with it so long. One last lightning round. Yes or no? I've said just about all I have to say. So now you're going to get a minute and a half each, starting down at the far end. And once we're here, we're done, and we ask the candidates to stick around for a few minutes and talk to you individually. So a minute and a half now.
So since I was little, I know that we've been addressing homelessness in this district and in the state. We've been addressing gentrification. We've been addressing immigration issues since before, just right after amnesty with Ronald Reagan. And I got a feeling that in 5 years and 10 years, we're still going to be addressing these issues. And this election comes down to, this is a one-year election. What are we realistically going to change in 1 year? We're going to fight for all those things. But with this administration, what are we realistically going to change? I mean, we need to have somebody that believes in all these causes, which I do. But one of the things that I did last year is that I went up to Sacramento with a group called Assault, and we ended the statute of limitations on rape and sexual assault. That was something real. That was something impacting women on a daily basis. And what I want to do now is go and impact the prevention of sexual abuse of children. And I want to challenge you guys to one thing. I want to challenge you to not be able to find at least 5 people that are in your family that you live with, that you work with, that are your friends, that were not sexually abused as children when they were little. Because it impacts so many people, but we don't address it. We can't see the sexually abused kids on the street homeless, so that doesn't impact us. We can't see tangible evidence of the abuse, except for in families where it's happening and they ignore it. So please help me make some changes to protect our kids. We can do that in just 1 year.
So I know I sound sometimes like I'm coming out of left field. So I'm gonna give you 3 things that I want you to keep in mind when you think about what I've said tonight. First thing is, democracy matters. Second thing is, design and process matters. And the last thing is, people matters. They matter to me. Democracy matters to me, design matters to me, and process matters to me, and people matters to me. I think we are at a historical moment where we have the opportunity to write a new social contract. I think the old one is falling apart, probably for the best, and we have the opportunity to write a new and better one. And I think that's going to take 3 things. First thing, democracy matters, so the first thing we have to do is we have to take back the power. The second thing is design and process matters, right? So we have to roll our sleeves up, and we have to do the work of actually figuring out what's going on out there. We can't take any of our previous ideas and solutions for granted. We have to figure out what's actually going to work now. And the third thing is that people matters. And so what we really should be looking at is not whether or not we win one political battle or not, but whether or not we're actually making a definable, concrete, measurable, positive impact on people's lives. And we need to reach for that higher ground. So that's the 3 things. Take back the power, roll our sleeves up, and reach for higher ground. I'm Patrick Coppola. Thank you very much.
First off, I want to thank ADA and DSA for hosting us. I thought that was thank you so much, and very great of you to do that, and invite us all. I'm very happy to be able to introduce myself and have this platform. My name is David Vela, born and raised in this community, very interesting trajectory. We were renters our whole lives, single mom. So, I lived in East LA a lot. I've lived in Angelino Heights. I've lived in Lincoln Heights. That's part of the struggle of my journey, because we couldn't afford all the time to own a home. My dream was to buy my mom a home, and I finally did. Got myself through UCLA and Pepperdine, helped my brothers and sisters. It was everybody's story, but for me it was a little rougher. My dad used to hit my mom every day from the age of when I can remember till I was 12, till I stood up to him. And that violence and all that, I had to put that away, compartmentalize it, and then move on in my life. I've been elected before. I've been a public servant, and one of the things that I wanted to do for everyone, and for you in particular, was I wanted to lend that skill set. I've been in the building before. I understand Sacramento. I understand where its weaknesses are, and where we can be able to push our agenda, because I'm a different type, I think, of socialist. I'm the kind that believes in food stamps, which I used heavily when I was little, and welfare and public housing, and that's where I'm coming from. I'm coming to help those people, and I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, I think it's also safe to say that I might be coming out of left field a little bit too here sometimes. But we've seen how the 2-party duopoly and the back and forth between the Democrats and Republicans has only pushed further and further to the right in this country. The Democrats in this country are either conservatives in any other country. Although my chances have been severely hurt by the fact that I didn't accept any of those emails or those marketing campaigns, those mass mailings, in the words of Eugene Debs, I'd rather vote for somebody that I want and not get it than vote for somebody that I don't want and get it. I'd also like to qualify my statement about SB 562 a little bit. I'm a socialist, which means that I want the complete restructuring of society that completely removes any people's needs from commodification at all. That includes any taxes at all for anyone. This is the kind of thing we need. This country, we are in a crisis right now. We're in the crisis of capitalism. Capitalism is destroying itself. We cannot continue the way we've been doing. We need radical change, and electing me will send a powerful message. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Andrew Goro. As you know, on October 3rd, we need to get people to vote, because right now less than 8% are predicted to vote, and that's ridiculous. And one thing I want to do in Sacramento is empower local communities, because at the end of the day, when the community is empowered, they can solve their own problems. We don't need politics. For example, I was in East LA last weekend. This mom told me, we're in Los Angeles. We need to be poor, but we have hearts. We help our neighbors out in times of need. And I thought that's more important than all these programs that many of us want to propose. Because when the communities are empowered, they can solve their own problems. We help our own. And that's an important message we need to do, because for decades, the Sacramento's been taking the wealth from our communities. They've been restricting us from making our own jobs. And that's ridiculous. So when we empower local communities, we solve our own problems. We don't need people in Sacramento to tell us what to do, because we know we need to educate our kids. We know we need to help the poor. We know that already. We don't need anyone to tell us that. And at the end of the day, that's what I'm here for. And the main point is, for too long, the political class has been taking advantage of us. And so if we localize stuff, we get rid of big money. If we localize stuff, we get more people involved in communities. And that's the main part. I know it's repetitive, but this is the main cause of the problems we have right now, because we're not localizing ourselves. We're not getting involved in the community. Why can't we get involved in communities? Because we work too hard. Not too hard, we work, and most of the money goes to paying the house. Thank you.
Well, first I want to thank the sponsoring organizations. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. And I want to thank all the candidates here today. This is what democracy is about. And we're seeing it at play here. And I'm honored to be part of it. I have served you, as I said, for nearly 15 years in various local capacities. I'm not new to local public service, and I'm not new to politics. I'm a movement progressive that has rolled up my sleeves to work for civil rights, for marriage equality, for immigrant rights, and I'm going to continue that movement to make sure we have a clean environment and that we have a progressive, bold agenda here in California. I'm committed to that. I'm proud to have the endorsements of the Sierra Club, as I mentioned, Planned Parenthood Advocacy Project, Equality California, and Stonewall Democrats. I'm going to continue to lead the effort to make sure that we have a unified and progressive district here, and that we lead the way for California. I'd be honored to earn your vote. Thank you so much.
So I do want to start by thanking all of you and for your activism and for the coming here and for the candidates. You know, democracy works because of people, and that's always been how it works. I want to thank the ADA and the DSA and the Highland Park Neighborhood Council for doing this. And then,
LA Progressive.
oh, and LA Progressive, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, I am a progressive Democrat. And that means a couple things. I know that the party, which I've had a front row seat on for a while now, needs reform from the top down. But progressives have a way of kind of recognizing each other across the room. And I'm going to share just some of my endorsements. One is State Senator Josh Newman, a principled politician who turned a red district blue and who voted for SB 562, showing you can do it in this one district. I want to thank the Feel the Burn Democrats who endorsed me. And by the way, they use ranked choice voting, something we should do in the state that would help a lot of people. I want to thank Vote Vets and 314 Action, national organizations who recognized our campaign. My own union, the Union of American Physicians and Dentists, and then the California Nurses Association, who know progressives when they see them because they are them, and that's why they endorse me. I am Ron Birnbaum. I will fight for you. I'll fight with you. More importantly, I'll fight with you. I appreciate your vote and your support. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gabriel Sandoval. I would like to thank the organizers of this great forum. I also like to thank the candidates who chose to be here and understand the importance that we should represent all the diversity of this district, including but not limited to the progressives in this particular district. It was a choice to be here, and so I applaud everybody who made the choice to be here to connect with you. My name is Gabriel Sandoval, and I understand and appreciate that there's a lot of serious issues taking place, again, in our nation, in our state, and our city. And yes, I am progressive. Everyone here is progressive, but I think it's important now more than ever to identify what progressive actions have been taken. I've worked for the city of Los Angeles, where I protected individuals from notario fraud. I developed a policy in concert with the federal government to promote citizenship. When I worked for President Barack Obama, I ensured that students were not being discriminated against because of their race or their color or their national origin or their disability. This is a serious election that requires someone with experience. I'm also supported by heroes in our community, individuals who normally don't have dogs in this fight, as it were, like Father Greg Boyle, who's a champion of criminal justice reform and giving second chances, and like Sylvia Mendez of the Mendez v. Westminster case that put an end to segregation in the state of California. I hope I can earn your support. This is a serious election, and thank you for the opportunity to communicate my vision with you.
Thank you, folks. That's it.